Okay, hello friends, it's your instructor, Ondrej. I'm going to give you a brief lecture about how to write a literature review. Now, it's kind of a silly metaphor, but I see the literature review as a sort of flower pot for research. It's an open structure that forms the boundaries, the container that research is supposed to fill. Actually, when my wife, who teaches these same kinds of things at the hotel school, saw this slide, she said, what do you mean the literature review is like that flower pot? That it's broken to begin with? No, that's not what I mean. I mean, the literature review is sort of an open structure that shows the reader why your study and why your data collection is necessary, why, in fact, they want to be interested in the knowledge that you're going to create. So we're going to talk about what the literature review is supposed to do. We're going to talk about how to collect literature and how to synthesize it into a solid literature review. There are a number of things that the literature review does as part of being this open structure for research to grow. And this is just a list. It shows that you know the topic well. It explains the key concepts and ideas. It shows that this topic or these theories are important. It keeps you from repeating others' mistakes, and it makes your approach or your research questions more elaborate as needed. And to accomplish this, there are basically two things that happen in the literature review. They are synthesis and criticism. Synthesis means bringing ideas from a variety of sources, that is a variety of books or scientific papers that you read, together. So for example, there are lots of articles about the effects of tourism on health. People who take holidays are less likely to have heart attacks, they feel lower levels of stress, they experience more positive feelings. When you sum up all these various findings, there seems to be this general pattern that holidays improve people's health. So in a literature review about the effects of tourism on health, you would write something like tourism improves health, and then talk about these different findings as support or as evidence for that conclusion. But a literature review doesn't stop there. A crucial second goal of the literature review is to show what's missing from current knowledge. You do this to show that the literature review is this empty container, to show that essentially more research needs to be done. As an example, it's impossible to say from current research on tourism and health how long the positive effects of holidays last. Okay, some studies say, well, the good effects of holidays are very long-lasting. Other studies say the good feelings that you get from holidays go away as soon as you get home. So if you put all these problems with existing studies together, you create a criticism that we don't know for how long tourism improves health. This is really a key conclusion or sort of end goal of the literature review, to show what's lacking from existing research on the topic. So the most important point in this lecture is that the two goals of a literature review are synthesis and criticism. Every literature review needs to do these two things. Along the way, the literature review needs to answer some key questions about the state of knowledge, key theories and concepts, methods used in previous research, and also controversies, shortcomings, inconsistencies in the previous research. And that's where the criticism really comes in. So let's look at where the literature in a literature review comes from. There are many sources out there, and I suggest to you that we can rank these sources in a very general way in terms of quality. So there are good sources like academic journals and quite bad sources like the internet. And there's a lot of stuff in between. In our literature review, we want to focus on the sources that are in green or yellow because they're the best. In this rough pyramid that I made to show, what which sources are better than some others. Now, in particular, academic journal articles and academic conference abstracts are especially good. What makes these sources so strong is the process of double-blind peer review that they go through before they're published. When I submit an article, for example, to one of these journals, like I recently sent one to the journal Leisure Sciences, my name is removed from the file, and the article is sent out to people like me, that is, other tourism researchers. I don't know who they are. They don't know who I am. The whole thing is completely anonymous, hence double-blind. They read it, and let me tell you, they are so critical and so detailed in their criticism. For example, on this Leisure Sciences paper, they said I needed a stronger rationale, I needed to add more recent tourism research, and so on. And this criticism, this review that I got for just one paper went on for pages and pages. I had to make all these changes for the paper to have even a chance. So when I get their comments, if they don't just reject the article, which they often do, then I have to make all the changes, address all of their concerns before the article even has a chance of being published. That's a very high standard. The papers have to be very well written and report on studies that are very well done. So peer reviews are considered the real sort of gold nuggets of tourism research, the absolute highest quality of knowledge about tourism that's out there. Indeed, academic articles in journals such as the Journal of Travel Research, Annals of Tourism Research, and Current Issues in Tourism make up most of the sources that are cited in literature reviews. Okay, now what I would like to do is to close the slideshow for a moment and open a web browser, go into NHTV's library, and show you how we actually go about finding academic journal articles through the NHTV library. These journals cost thousands and thousands of euros every year, and NHTV pays for them so that you, as students, have access to this high-quality tourism research information. So I'm going to close the slideshow and open up the browser. Okay. So you start by going to the NHTV library website. This is very, very important. Again, NHTV pays a lot of money to get into those journals. So if you, let's say, search in Google for Annals of Tourism Research, you'll get to the website for Annals of Tourism Research. But Annals is then going to ask you to pay for articles. You don't want to do that. You want to get them for free. And to do that, you have to go into Annals through the NHTV library website. So let's go to the Mediathek, and www.nhtv.nl/library, I think, gets you to the same place. Okay, this is the library front page. On the left, there are two links that are useful to you when writing a literature review: databases and journals. If you click on journals, you can look through one journal at a time, like Annals of Tourism Research or Journal of Travel Research. When you click on databases, you can search many journals at a time. But you might also get stuff that isn't in journals. So let's look at databases first. There are many different kinds of databases, and you need to know which ones are scientific, which ones have scientific journal articles. One of them is here, Emerald. That's a good one. EBSCO is another good one. Sage, Science Direct, those are all good academic databases. So let's look at EBSCO. You open it and you get something that kind of looks like Google, except it's going to search in academic journal articles. Let's say we want to search for something about the destination life cycle. Probably we're going to get a lot of hits. Okay, We get 107 results, so that's not too many. We can go through the titles of the articles and the abstracts of the articles, and take a look, see which ones are the most relevant for us. And here you can also see, which journals these are coming from. Journal of Travel and Tourism Marketing. Okay, that's a scientific journal. Tourism Geographies. That's a scientific journal. Tourism Management. That's a very well-known scientific journal. So these would all be good ones to click on. And if you want the article, you just click on PDF full text and you're going to get it. But a word of caution here. We searched for destination life cycle and we got 107 hits. Notice though on the left you have this little menu where you can refine your results. Now we talked about peer-reviewed publications as being the best level of quality. What if we click on peer-reviewed? We'll see if all 107 of these were from peer-reviewed scientific journals. So let's click on peer-reviewed and update. Check this out. We went from 107 hits to only 71. So that means that there were more than 35 hits that we got in our initial search that were not at the highest level of quality. So that's my caution with databases. The cool thing about databases is they search many journals at once. The problem is some of the hits that you get might not be from peer-reviewed journals, and you have to check that. Okay? So that's an example of a database. Why don't we go back and look at some journals. Okay, so again, the NHTV Library website, the menu on the left, click on Journals, and here you can click on Tourism, but there's also ones in Leisure that are very useful. And here you have a very long list, and also not all of these are peer-reviewed academic journals. But if you're going to search one journal at a time, which is actually what I usually do, you can start by going for the ones that are at the highest level, that are the best known, like Annals of Tourism Research, Journal of Travel Research, Current Issues in Tourism, Tourism Management, and journals like that. So let's go to the Journal of Travel Research. Okay, so we click on Journal of Travel Research. And now it goes to the Journal of Travel Research homepage. Again, you could get here just by Googling Journal of Travel Research, but then you wouldn't be able to get the articles for free. This way, we can get the articles for free. Here you have a little search box, and again, this just searches within the journal. So let's see if there's anything in the Journal of Travel Research, which is a more kind of commercial marketing focused one for destination life cycle. Okay, actually 285 hits. So quite a lot, but probably some of them are based on destination, life, and cycle rather than destination life cycle, because I didn't search for it as a phrase. But this first hit from January 1992, so kind of old, is clearly about destination life cycle. Okay, and you can scroll through and just read through the titles to get an idea or to get a hint of what the article is about, to see which ones are the most useful. Here's one from 2007, Meanings and Consumption Characteristics of Places at a Tourism Destination. I think this one's fairly well known. So let's see if we can open and download the actual article. Click on Full Text PDF. And here it is. Now we are at the good stuff. This is the PDF that actually contains the article. Okay? And for our literature review, this is what we would consider our source. This is what we would want to read. Now, big secret, you're not supposed to read the whole thing. Because look, the Journal of Travel Research tends to have fairly short articles, but look at all this text. This is considered a short article. It's really, really long. Okay, all these charts and numbers. This article will likely translate into just a few lines, just a few key points that you make in your literature review. So when you read an article like this, you need to go kind of straight to the parts that are important. A good place to start is by reading the abstract. This is a very short summary of what the entire article is about, and often when you read the abstract, you will see that the whole article, in fact, is not that relevant, and you can just get rid of it. After that, for the purposes of a literature review, I think the sections that are the most important are the introduction. So that's kind of starting from here to about here, right? And then this article goes into its own literature review on the meanings of tourism places, the destination, and the research questions. All right, then these parts you can just skim to see roughly what they did. And then the part that's really, really interesting for you is the discussion and the conclusion. Okay, so if you read those parts and you get an idea of what they say, then you can move on from there to another article and to thinking about, okay, how do the different articles relate to each other. Okay. Okay, so again, the introduction and the discussion and conclusion are especially important to read and to give your time to because they state why the topic of the study is important and they summarize the main contributions that that article makes to tourism research overall. It's good to take notes or to mark up the article while you're reading it. If you read it on the computer, you can actually click little comments on the PDF. It's likely that you'll find some unfamiliar words, especially in the methods section. If you're going in depth in there, you might need to write them down and look them up in a dictionary or in your textbooks. In your note-taking, it's a good idea, of course, to focus on what you think is wrong, what you think is missing for the paper. And then you'll really have something to criticize. You know, these criticisms that you make for various articles will accumulate, and you'll see some overlaps where one thing is wrong with one article that's also wrong with another article, and you'll know, okay, this is something I really need to talk about in my literature review. So now we get to the creative part. How do you go from all these ideas and notes you've made on papers, on research that has been done, into one smooth, coherent, structured literature review? Well, I like to start not by writing, but by drawing something visual. In your reading, you're going to find a number of key concepts or variables like tourist happiness, or the life stage of the destination, or health and well-being. So these concepts are good starting points for you to draw a picture. You want to draw a picture that represents how what these concepts are and how they're related. So just as some silly examples, if you have a concept that's the weather, you might have subcategories of temperature, sunshine, rainfall, and so on. You may often read about concepts that are causally related to each other. That is, one thing causes another, like speed bumps slow down cars and therefore reduce traffic accidents. And so you can draw a diagram where these things are in boxes and they're connected with arrows. If you have a picture of sort of boxes and arrows, that's a good starting point for writing because it gives you a structure right to begin with. What's really great about having a diagram like this is that you can map the papers that you've read to specific boxes and arrows. And then you can use the logic of the diagram to give structure to the literature review. For example, let's say I'm working with the diagram involving speed bumps and accidents from the slide before. There might be a really important paper that defines speed bumps and elaborates on different kinds of speed bumps. I would put the author's name and date by the speed bump box. Okay, so that's the first paper that defines speed bumps. I need to talk about that in the literature review. Then let's say I read a paper that showed the speed of cars does in fact affect the rate of accidents, right? So then I would put the name and date of this paper next to the arrow linking the speed and the accident boxes. The study showed that faster drivers crash more. And that study is essentially supporting or backing up or giving evidence for that arrow. And besides giving you a structure that you can follow, a diagram like this will very quickly reveal what the gaps in the knowledge are. So like right now, we're missing a few things. We're missing a paper that says that speed bumps actually slow cars down. We're missing a paper that defines or conceptualizes the speed of cars. And we're missing a paper that conceptualizes or defines traffic accidents. Then from this, again, you want to fulfill these two important purposes. The synthesis, so what do we know at this point about the effects of speed bumps on speed, on traffic accidents, and the criticism. What's missing from the current knowledge? Let's see an example of how we actually write, let's say, a paragraph of synthesis. You need to explain to the reader with lots of examples to support these common ideas that you've found in paper after paper. So in a literature review on tourism and well-being, the topic I was talking about earlier, I read many papers that suggested that tourism improved health and well-being. So I wrote, the well-being outcomes of tourism have recently caught the attention of scholars who study tourism. The well-being outcomes of tourism appear to be positive. That's the synthesis. That's the common idea that I've gotten from all these papers. And then I have some examples to support. And each of these examples comes from a specific scientific article. Initial findings confirm that holidays relieve work burnout, reduce risks from heart disease and diabetes, boost happiness, and contribute to life satisfaction. Notice I'm not spending pages and pages of text summarizing what's in these articles. In fact, every article gets just kind of a few words of summary, the key finding. The person reading the literature review doesn't want to know the intimate details of what's in every article. They just want to know how the articles fit together. Right? So don't spend a lot of time on summarizing. Spend the text showing how the articles fit together. There are a number of ways to do this. What I've described in my well-being example looks like progressive coherence, where you build together things that are related. But often the works on a common topic, let's say the photos that tourists make, the literature on that topic is very, very unrelated. So you'll have to be quite creative and insightful to find some links between those articles. So we call that synthesized coherence. You can also make the argument that, well, the works on a particular topic are really not related at all to each other, or they don't agree at all. And that situation is actually quite common in tourism research. That's non-coherence. The point is, though, to talk about the connections, discussions, or disagreements among articles. Do not just summarize the findings of each article in a repetitive list. This is incredibly boring to read and offers no new knowledge or insights. This is clearly the literature review of a beginner student and something you absolutely want to avoid. Now, in my literature reviews, I usually synthesize first and then criticize. Criticism is clearest when structured as a number of points or weaknesses that all the papers share. So again, you don't go one paper at a time, you go one criticism or point of weakness at a time. What I wrote about tourism and health was that all these different studies seem to be really inconsistent and that they can't be generalized. So I wrote, some studies report long-lasting effects, but many suggest that mental and emotional effects in particular fade quickly after the holiday is over. That's criticism one. They're inconsistent. Also, because each study follows a different age group or nationality, it's difficult to compare or generalize findings across several groups. Point two, this research can't be generalized across several groups. So, in sum, existing research on well-being effects of holidays is inconsistent, criticism one, and cannot be generalized. Criticism two. So just as with synthesis, a number of criticism strategies or structures exist. Most commonly, we show that despite lots of wonderful research, there's just a gap. There's some piece of knowledge missing, some research question that hasn't been answered, some population or destination that a theory hasn't been applied to yet, something like that. But it's also possible that a new perspective is needed, that a whole new theory needs to be applied to a situation or developed for a certain situation. And finally, you can be extremely critical and show that, okay, previous findings on the subject do exist, but the studies that these findings come from are badly done, that they're based on poor research methods or a bad application of the theory. If you have trouble thinking of what to criticize, there are two sections that can be really helpful. One is to look at other literature reviews, because previous literature reviews have already looked at, let's say, a theory or a destination that you're dealing with. And these literature reviews have already pointed out the main weaknesses in that particular literature, that is in the research on that theory or that destination. You can use these criticisms as a starting point. Also, the process of peer review tends to force authors to confess the weaknesses in their own articles, usually in a little section like a paragraph called limitations. And sometimes it's not labeled limitations. It's just a paragraph, but it's in every paper you can find it. It can be in various places, methods, discussion, conclusions, but it's really worth finding because you know that if there are weaknesses that even the author is willing to admit, then those are a really good place to start. Okay. Now, let's talk about how you give credit to the papers you've read in your literature review. The idea is that you have to show where your ideas come from, what you've read, where you've read a particular thing that you're talking about. And an example of this done correctly and incorrectly is in these references to the push-pull theory of tourism motivation by Graham Dan, which he wrote about in 1977. Right? So these are two different ways that you can do it. You can put what's called an internal citation, which is the last name followed by the year of publication at the end of the sentence, or you can sort of introduce the idea that way by saying, according to Dan, then the date of publication in parentheses, and then write about the push-pull theory. You cannot write about the push-pull theory without giving credit to Dan, because you didn't invent it. He did. So to write about that theory without saying in some way, hey, it comes from this guy in his 1977 paper, is in fact plagiarism. And this is the case even though this is a sentence that I wrote. I did not copy and paste this sentence out of Dan. I wrote that tourists are motivated by the push to travel and the pull of a particular destination. But that idea comes from Dan, and I have to give him credit not just for the words, but even for just the idea. Otherwise, it's plagiarism. Okay, so plagiarism is taking someone else's ideas without giving credit, and it's stealing, and it will be treated that way. Now here's another example, where you can put the so-called internal citation at the end, or you can start off with, according to such and such author at this date, here's a particular theory. And again, these sentences that you see up on the screen now, these are my words, but because they talk about someone else's idea, Coherence 2000, I still have to give Coherence 2000 the credit for it. Now, what if you do actually want to use someone else's words? You want to copy the way that someone else said something. Well, first of all, you can't do that for whole paragraphs, okay? It's your words, it's your ideas, it's your writing that the reader is really interested in. So, at the most, you can quote, that is, actually use author's original wording for maybe a sentence at a time. But it isn't particularly good to be writing some text of your own and then put in the middle of it a sentence from another paper, like a combination of push and pull information, etc., copied from Coherence 2000. It's much better if you do it this way, if you frame it in a sentence of your own by saying, according to Coherence in 2000 on page 317, and then you quote and you put in the text from Coherence. And again, after this, you would pick up with another sentence of your own, maybe explaining what he meant by that quote. So this bottom example is far, far more effective than this top one. Okay? But in any case, if you're using actual text from a source like an article that you've read, you have to use the author's last name, the date of publication, the page where you found the quote, and the quote itself, the words that are not yours but are from the author, have to be in these things, in quotation marks. Otherwise, it's plagiarism. It's stealing. Okay? Again, you really don't want to do this. It's a crime, and it will be treated that way. It often happens that an article has several authors. If you have two authors, you put an and between them. If you have more than two authors, you use et al. Now, let's say that you have multiple sources for one idea. This is a very good thing because it means that you've read the same idea in a couple of different places. It makes you look smart. That's exactly what you want. So then you list the sources in alphabetical order of author's last name. Okay, and that's writing literature reviews. Best wishes with searching for literature and with synthesis and criticism to make a good, structured flower pot for your research study.